Good day, guys, and welcome to Pure Knowledge YouTube channel. And today we are back at it again. We're reviewing the Human and Social Biology 2025 paper. Now, of course, in reviewing this paper, I'll be giving answers, comprehensive answers, of course, but it doesn't have to be word for word. So if you didn't put that for the persons who did the exam and you want to see how well you did, I mean, if you didn't put exactly what I said, but it's the same concept, then you should be okay. But of course, this video is for also future students who will consult this video to get an understanding. So I just put most of these questions, I will put more than the answers to give you options, just so you can have a better understanding. All right, so let's go. So the first question states to define each of the following terms according to the World Health Organization. And of course, the standard definition is is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. Right? And and the disease, right, is a condition that impairs the normal functioning of part or all of an organism and leads to loss of good health. So anywhere there you will get full marks. Again, question B state two causes of non-communicable diseases. And non-communicable are diseases that cannot be passed on. So therefore, you passed on from one person to another, right? So therefore, we talk about things like poor eating habits, which will normally lead to obesity, smoking that can lead to cancer and other various diseases, right? So an inactivity contribute to persons developing these diseases, like you're not exercising, right? So any one of these and anyone that fit non-communicable disease would have been accepted. All right. Then now we see where we get a graph to analyze. So the graph basically states that long COVID occurs where patients continue to experience the effects of COVID-19 for extended periods after recovery. Figure 1 shows the signs and the symptoms of long COVID and its prevalence in patients. All right. And then now the first question states from graph in figure 1, identify two signs and symptoms that patients with long COVID experience. But signs are things that you can see, right? While symptoms are things that the patient will feel that they necessarily can't see. So based on this graph here, any one of these fever, vomiting, and diarrhea would be signs because you can see them, right? So any two, right, would be fine. And then for symptoms, abdominal pain, headache, fatigue, and cough would be example of symptoms. So any one of these two, you would have gotten full marks. Then it says, part two says, identify the most common sign or symptom that long COVID patient experience. And of course, you look at the graph here, you see that fatigue is the highest. So therefore, fatigue would be our answer here. Then part three says to identify the least common sign or symptom that long COVID patients experience. And of course, it's between abdominal and vomiting, but we can see here where abdominal is just below vomiting. So therefore, abdominal pain would have been our answer. D says it is reported that some individuals who are affected by long COVID may experience signs and symptoms for up to 2 years. So just two ways in which long-term fatigue in individuals affected by long COVID could impact the community, and one way it could impact the economy. Now, this, of course, is a thinking question, so you'll have to think about it, right? So long COVID, right? They say it's reported that some individuals who are affected by long COVID may experience signs and symptoms. So they're talking about now fatigue. How would fatigue affect, impact, how would fatigue impact the community? right? And how it impact economy. Now, when one is fatigued, means that you're easily tired. So we could say that less community involvement because people can't join events or volunteer, which weakens the community connection. So nobody will have the energy to get involved in events because we'll be all tired. Then it says more pressure on families and caregivers to help those with long-term fatigue, leading to stress and family strain, right? So um if one family member is sick, right? And easily fatigued in this case, it will mean that the others that are not sick will have to carry all the burden. And then when you know you have a lot of burden on you, it can lead to stress or family strain. And of course, you can come up with some others because, of course, this is a reasoning question. Then it says one way in which it could impact the economy and, of course, decrease workforce productivity, right? And increase absenteeism because people want to take time from work when they're tired. And if they're tired, then they will not be productive to do the work quickly, right? So that would r- result in a loss of income in the society, right? Because people will not be able to work full time, and then we will see where it will cost the country. All right. So any one of those or any answer like those, again, this is a reasoning question, so it's really down to your reasoning. And of course, you can put your answers in the comment, right? Then question two is a figure, right? Shows processes S and T, which occur in female reproductive system, right? So they are saying identify the process that occurs at S. And of course, you see the egg is being released there, and the egg is released, we call that ovulation. Then it says state the day of the menstrual cycle in which the process identified A occurs, and we know this that day 14, the middle of the 28-day cycle, is when ovulation occurs. So 14 days, not range, days. Day, right? So 14 is acceptable. Then it says describe the process that is occurring at region labeled T. Now we can see here, if we can put some zoom on this, you can see the egg is being released there, and then we see it is being fertilized, it is being met by the sperm, and then now we see where meiosis is taking place, right? And we can see where now this egg is now developing into a zygote. So then we can say fertilization is the process that is occurring here, right? And they say to describe that process, right? So we know it's fertilization, but describing it is where the marks come, right? So if you didn't even put fertilization, you describe the process, you would have got all your marks. So it's a process where the sperm cell penetrates and fuses with the egg cell and form a zygote, which is implanted in the uterus walls. Because we can see where it's growing little roots here, we know it as implantation, right? So that's what's going on there. Any answer around here, you would get your full marks. Then we say figure 3 shows 3 stages labeled X, Y, Z, which occur during the process of childbirth. The stages are not in correct order. So we look at the stages here. Let's zoom up back here. Right? So using a letter labels only, place the stages of childbirth in figure 3. So the first stage obviously would be Y, because we can see here the baby is nicely in the womb there. Then the second stage will be Z. We see the baby coming out, right? And then the final stage where we see here the placenta detaching from the uterus and the umbilical cord outside there cut. Obviously, it's been cut there. So we say the last stage is X. So the answer would be Y, Z, X, and that's pretty straightforward. It says briefly this explain what occurs during the second stage of childbirth. So the second stage would be this one. So what's going on here? Well, here, of course, we will see where the baby is being delivered, right? And this is 3 months, right? But of course, I want to give you a comprehensive answer. So during the second stage of childbirth, represented by stage Z, the baby is delivered through the birth canal, right? And the uterus continues to contract strongly. You know that there's contraction, right? While the mother is pushing, right? The baby moves down through the cervix and the vagina. The baby's head typically emerges first, followed by shoulders and the rest of the body. The umbilical cord is attached to the placenta during this stage, and the baby begins to breathe independently once delivered. This stage ends with the complete birth of the baby, right? So once you have contractions there, um, how the baby come out typically, right? You would get your full marks, right? 3 marks. See, explain the contraction and all that good marks, right? Let's go, guys. Then it says, name the hormone which is released throughout during childbirth. And of course, it's a feel good hormone, oxytocin. Then it says to explain how the name hormone oxytocin facilitates childbirth. Well, oxytocin stimulates powerful contraction. Oxytocin is what's responsible for the contraction of the uterine muscles during labor. Right? These contractions help to dilate the cervix and push the baby through the birth canal. Right? We see where as the labor progress, the pressure of the baby's head against the cervix trigger the release of more oxytocin, right? Positive feedback mechanism. Of course, I am giving you the most complete answer, right? Causing contraction to become stronger and more frequent. Oxytocin also helps to reduce bleeding after delivery by causing the uterus to contract and compress blood vessels, right? And of course, it's a feel-good hormone. It gives you that energy of feeling good, right? So anything, right? It's 4 marks here. So anything similar to this, right? If you don't have negative positive feedback mechanism, that's fine. Okay, but of course, this is video is also for future. So you're learning as you go along. Excellent. Let's move. Identify one component of afterbirth, sorry. And of course, we can see here where the placenta is detaching. So of course, that would be the placenta. All right, guys, let's move on. Identify the number of sets of chromosome containing haploid human cell and a diploid human cell. Of course, haploid is half, so it is one set there, set of 23 chromosome, which is now represented by N. And then we see diploid, two sets of chromosome, which is, say, 46 chromosome, now represented by 2N, pretty standard, guys. All right, then it says, B says, state the term which characterizes each of the following definition in the table below. So, what is a long molecule of DNA that contains the genetic material of the cell? And of course, that is the chromosome. Short section of DNA that contains information of a particular trait. Of course, that is gene. Part C says toxin, right, are drugs that inhibit mitosis by preventing the movement of chromatids in the cell. Now, don't be thrown off by that drug, right? They're testing your knowledge. So, the first thing they're saying to you is to define mitosis, and the standard definition by the CXC syllabus is a type of cell division that results in the formation of two daughter cells each with the same number and kind of chromosome as the parent cell, right? Then part two says to identify two stages of mitosis that will not occur as a result of the action of toxins, right? So you have to read this here. So here says this question is a little bit tricky if you don't know your phases, right? The phase of mitosis, right? So toxins are drugs that inhibit the movement of chromatids. Now, what you have to look at now is that which phases does the chromatid actually move, right? Or is involved? So the stages where the chromatids are heavily involved would be the stages that would be affected, that would not occur if that drug is in the system, right? So if that drug is in the system, then all the stage that involves chromatids, right, it would stop it. It will not happen. So the phase that involve chromatids are anaphase, that's one. And this, of course, is when the chromatids separate and move to the opposite pole. And then the other one would be telophase. And this is when nuclear membranes reform around the separated chromosomes. And of course, if you had metaphase, because metaphase also has some involvement of the chromatids, I think that could be accepted as well. Then part three says to suggest one process that will not occur in the body as a result of the action of toxins. Now, that again is a tricky question. It's just to throw you off. But what they're saying is that if toxin is there, that means telophase won't happen, anaphase won't happen. Now, without these phases, you wouldn't have mitosis. So what they're basically asking you is, what would happen without mitosis? That is just them throwing you off, right? So what would happen without mitosis would be there will be no cell growth, there will be no tissue repair, right? Since new cells cannot be formed through complete mitosis, right? That's all, guys. Let's move on. Then question D says figure shows a sickle cell, right, pedigree chart, and it's been a while since I've seen a pedigree chart on a test paper. Always thought it was been a while, right? So each individual in the pedigree is labeled 1 to 10. So we have the parents here, then we have the first generation, we have the second generation. We watch this, squares is male, circle is female, square with a little dark shade in it is a diseased male, and of course the circle with a little shade in it is the diseased female. So the question says, from this figure, identify the two individuals in the first generation. So we are here in the first generation who are carriers of sickle cell trait. Now, carriers, remember, are the persons who have the disease but don't show it, right? I remember it takes sickle cell, it takes two recessive to get the disease. So you have to be recessive. And remember that would be, let's say, sickle cell. Let's use S. So it would be small s, two small s coming together, recessive, right? So we look at the first generation here, and we see where 3 and 4 have a diseased male, right? So that means 3 and 4 would be carriers because we can see here 3 and 4 are normal. They don't have any color here. That means they are normal, but they have a child that has disease. So that means that both of them must be carriers, right? So both of them would have something like, so they would have number 3, individual 3 would have something like this, dominant and a recessive, and then they have a dominant and a recessive. And if they both get a child, it's highly likely that they'll produce, sorry, let me just remember that. They will produce two small s, and two small s will result in a recessive, and that child would have the disease. Right? So individual 3 and 4 is what we'll go with here. right? They are heterozygous because they are not affected, right? And we can see where they produce individual eight, and for this to occur, both parents must carry the recessive allele. Right? Next one says I one individual in the parental generation who has heterozygous. So give one individual, identify one individual in the parental generation who has the heterozygous genotype. But of course, that is easy. It says parental, so we go up the top here and we would choose any one of the parents. So it says one, so it's either anyone, one or two would have been accepted. Then it says identify one individual in the first generation. So right here, in the first generation, right, who has homozygous recessive genotype. Homozygous. And if you have homozygous, it means it's the same. So that means they have two small s, and that means it would be anyone with the disease. Because remember, sickle cell, only two recessive you can get the disease, right? So it's either five or six. And of course, if you are doing this and you don't understand, you can always link us for classes. And of course, we have videos explaining. All right, next. Figure 5 shows a waste disposal method used throughout the Caribbean, right? And we look at this, we see a gas vent here, liners here, daily refuse here. And if you know refuse, that's basically garbage, right? So we have reuse being compacted and covered. So it says identify type of waste disposal method shown here. And of course, this is landfill. For some people, you can use sanitary landfill, right? And you don't have to be right. Then it says state the role of each of the following components. And one, the gas vent. Of course, the gas vent allows for safe release of methane and other gases produced during the decomposition of organic waste in the landfill, preventing dangerous buildup of gases that could lead to explosion or fires. So when you have the organic waste there, it gives off that methane, right? That greenhouse gas, right? And if it's stored up and not released, it could cause explosions. The gas vent is basically a air hole to release that pressure, to release that gas, right? Then the linear, of course, is right under, right here, and that is to protect, right? The contaminated liquid that is in the landfill, right? From seeping into the soil and groundwater aquifers, right? Thus protecting the surrounding environment from pollution. So this is actually preventing the contaminated liquid from seeping into the earth, right? So any answer like this, guys, you'll be good. Next, it says state two reasons for compacting and covering refuse. So why should you cover your garbage, basically? And of course, it's a simple question to prevent access by disease vectors such as flies, mosquitoes, rats, and other pests that can spread pathogen from the waste to humans. Then another reason could be to reduce odors and prevent the release of harmful gases produced during decomposition, thereby minimizing air pollution and improving environmental quality in surrounding areas. B1 says, name one type of improper domestic waste disposal throughout the Caribbean. And of course, open dumping is one. And open dumping is when you just throw the garbage anywhere. Um, there's no what would you say, preparation done to make sure that it's safe. You destroy it in the environment. So it's open dumping. That's one method. And of course, there are other methods, of course, but we just chose to go open dumping. So you can put in the comment what you put for this answer. Next, two says suggest three diseases that can be transmitted by vectors as a result of improper disposal of domestic waste, right? So, of course, there are many diseases, but we just pick um A few, so we pick dengue fever, which is transmitted by Aedes aegypti mosquito, right? Then we're talking about leptospirosis, which is transmitted by rodents, right? And then gastroenteritis transmitted by flies, and flies pitch on your food, move between waste and food. Then part three says stage three, other environmental or health hazard that may result from improper disposal of waste. So apart from these that they put up here, what are some other environmental or health hazard? So of course, depending on what you put here, you would fix it up. Down, you put some different answers down here. So one, air pollution from burning waste, of course, releasing toxic chemicals, right? Then we talk about contamination of underground water and surface water sources, right? And of course, if you don't have the liner here, this would happen. And then the other one is soil contamination with heavy metals, right? And other toxic substance that can enter the food chain. Right? So any answer like this, guys, you'll be excellent. Moving on. Recommend three ways in which citizens could reduce the amount of solid waste that requires disposal. So how would could we reduce it? Again, guys, if you have the three R's, you'll be good, right? But I want to give you something else. You get it thinking, right? So we could of course, use three R's. One of them is recycling. So we separate paper, plastic, glass from general waste and ensure that they enter the proper recycling stream, thereby reducing the volume of waste sent to landfills. Right. Then we could talk about implementing composting of organic waste. Right. So we turn food scraps, yard trimmings, and paper products, which can be diverted which can divert a single portion of household waste from landfill while creating nutrient-rich soil for gardening and agriculture. So what we are saying here is that you turn your regular organic waste into manure for your garden instead of throwing it away in the landfill. Then we say adopt a minimalist approach to consumption by purchasing only necessary items, choosing products with minimal packaging, right? Using reusable alternatives to disposal products, so like cloth shopping bags. You know, every time you go to supermarket, you buy a new bag, or you go shop, you buy a new bag. You use reusable bag, refillable water bottles, right? You don't just go and buy a water bottle every day, you reuse, right? Washable food containers, right? And repairing items rather than replacing them. So when something one in the house, fix it rather than just throw it away. So of course, guys, this is three simple marks. Of course, you don't have to write so much. It's just 3 marks. But of course, we want to give you a comprehensive answer. Next, moving on to section B now, moving nice. A woman screams for help at a restaurant because her husband has suddenly fallen to the floor. He is not breathing and is unconscious. Vincent, who has CPR training, shouts for the waiter to call the ambulance while turning the man onto his back on the floor. They wanted to list the next four steps in the cardiopulmonary resuscitation CPR that Vincent should use to assist the husband. So after he's on his back, the first thing is to gently tilt the victim's head backwards to open the airways by lifting the chin, right? Open the victim's mouth and remove any debris, if any there. Pinch the victim's nostril to close them and breathe in. Just seal their lips over the victim's mouth, open mouth, and breathe out in to the mouth for 1 second. If the victim chest rises, breathe into the mouth for a second time. Continue the process by giving one breath every 5 seconds until normal breathing resumes or medical help arrives. Now, of course, there are other ways. Some people might say tap the elbow and see if the person is responsive. You check the wrist, the pulse, and all of these things in the process. But of course, there are many steps. I don't think they are set 4 steps, like set 4 steps. I think, some books include other steps, some people include other steps. This step, however, is in your concise human and social biology text. So I just stick with what is in the concise. But there are other steps you can say, right, that is correct as well. Then it says state 2 benefits of using disposable device when applying mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And of course, these disposable devices what you put over the mouth, right? Instead of doing it just skin and skin, contact and contact, mouth and mouth, right? So what's the 2 benefits of using disposable device when applying mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? One, it reduces the risk of disease transmission between the rescuer and the victim, right? So you're on the ground, you're not sure what the rescuer has, if he has any diseases. So, I mean, the disposable device could be very handy there. It also provides a barrier that helps to overcome the hesitation and reluctance to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, increasing the likelihood that bystanders will provide this potentially life-saving intervention. So, what they're saying basically is that there's no hesitation because just like how the rescuer might have a disease, the patient might have a disease, and the rescuer might just get that disease from the patient, right? So basically, having a disposable device increases the likelihood that bystanders, a stranger, will actually perform mouth to mouth resuscitation, right? Good. Next. Amy is a college student who uses marijuana to maintain good mood and to help her focus on her studies. Not very good choice, Amy. Says to explain to Amy, you should explain to Amy why the use of marijuana will not help her to maintain a good mood or to achieve academic success. First thing, marijuana contains what we call THC, right? Tetrahydrocannabinol, right? Which initially may create feelings of relaxation or euphoria, right? Feeling good, right? But regular use can lead to severe negative effects, right? Another thing is that this also gives you what you would call, some people say hallucination, right? So therefore, Amy can't necessarily focus on her studies when she's not in the right frame of mind, right? So what are some other functions, right? It impairs your cognitive function. Cognitive meaning your brain, right? So marijuana affects brain areas responsible for memory, concentration, and learning, right? Research shows it reduces attention span, you can't focus, and impair short-term memory, making it harder to absorb and retain information from your studies. Then motivation syndrome. Regular marijuana use is associated with decreased motivation and initiative, right? Commonly called a motivation syndrome. This can make it difficult to maintain the consistent effort required for academic success. Next one, we talk about dependency and tolerance. Your brain can develop tolerance to marijuana, requiring increased amount to achieve the same mood effects, potentially leading to dependency. So basically, you're gonna start depending on the marijuana, right? Then we say mental health concerns. While you're using it to maintain good mood, right? Regular marijuana use is associated with increased risk of anxiety, depression, right? Paranoia, psychosis, right? And also it can also impact your sleep quality, right? So basically, guys, basically, this is 5 marks, and I've given you a lot to choose from, right? So anything near here, you will be on your way. All right, next, the hookah is a water pipe used to smoke flavored or sweetened tobacco. Hookah smoking usually occurs in groups where the same mouthpiece is passed from one user to another. Some individuals believe that this practice is safer method of using tobacco as compared to smoking cigarettes. So just 4 reasons why hookah use is just as more harmful than smoking cigarette. Now, for those who know what a hookah is, if you don't know, you can Google it. Right, it gives you that sweet sensation. It doesn't make you feel like you're smoking cigarette. You know that tobacco scent when you're smoking cigarette just gives you the ick. The hookah is a lot more pleasant, right? So therefore, a lot of people think it's better, but it's not. It comes with a risk. So first thing, they said that it pass from one mouthpiece, one user to another user. So first thing, shared mouthpiece increase disease transmission risk. Right? When the same mouthpiece is passed down from one user to another during hookah sessions, it can facilitate transmission of infectious disease such as herpes, tuberculosis, hepatitis, other diseases, right? Then what's the extended exposure duration? Right? Typical hookah session lasts for a long time. Lasts for an hour, can last for 2 hours, right? Exposing users to a significantly larger volume of smoke compared to the brief time it needs to smoke a cigarette. Because a cigarette did not take long. It will probably 10 minutes, if so much, right? But hookah is for a long period of time. So you're in the smoke for longer. This prolonged exposure results in inhaling more toxic substance over a single session. So again, guys, this is a thinking question. This is a thinking question. You have to think it through. Right? Then it says a false sense of safety from water filtration. The water in the hookah does not effectively filter out harmful substances, right? But they may actually trap beneficial compounds while allowing the carcinogens and the toxin to pass through. Right? This creates a dangerous misconception that smoking is cleaner and safer, right? But it's not. So they have a water filtration there that says it cleans, right? The toxins from it. But in truth and in fact, sometimes it just takes the good component and make the bad ones go through, right? And then it says next, higher carbon monoxide exposure. And of course, it's the same basically as the extended time period. Hookah smoking involves burning charcoal to heat the tobacco, which produces high level of carbon monoxide, levels that can be significantly higher than those from cigarette smoking. This increases the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning associated with heart damages. Right? So this question was a thinking question. If you had like things like use sweet flavor scent to mask the actual taste of it and to promote it more, those you have to think about it because this is not in the syllabus like that in terms of hookah, but the concept they wanted to reason. Right? Next, we have a marine ecosystem here. Pretty straightforward, right? It says identify type of pyramid show. Now, of course, you look at the pyramid, we see that the bottom here we have the phytoplankton, we see seagrass, algae, and we see it's at 1,000,000 calories here. And then we see that the calories are decreasing as we go along. So it moves from the mil to 10,000 to 1,000 to 100. Right? So we see where energy, because it's calories. So we see it's an energy through the word calories here. So we say it's an energy pyramid. Right? Then next is identify one carnivore and one omnivore. Of course, there's a lot of them. And of course, the carnivores are normally the top, so you can be safe. They say one, so the gray reef shark, I mean, can't go wrong with that. There are others like the bluefin tuna, black grouper, barjack, yellowtail snapper. Then we have the herbivore. And of course, the herbivores are those who eat plants. So we have to take the ones from this trophic level right here. So it will be Atlantic blue tongue, the zooplankton, or the queen pond. Right? Next, we says name one producer, and of course, the producers start the pyramid. So it will be the algae, seagrass, or phytoplankton. Next says explain why producers are essential for the success of the ecosystem. And of course, the producers is where the ecosystem gets its energy from. Right? So producers are essential for the success of the ecosystem because they convert solar energy into chemical energy through photosynthesis, forming foundation of the food chain. They are primary source of energy for all organisms in the ecosystem, and without them, consumers would have no food source and the ecosystem would collapse. Right? Moving on. Explain the pyramid shape of figure 6. Explain what the pyramid shape or figure shape says about the energy available at each successive trophic level. So what does the shape suggest? So first we start out wide and then we are going in, closing in, right? So that means that they are decreasing. And you can see it move from a mil to 10,000 to 1,000, so it's decreasing. Right? So the pyramid shape indicates that the energy decreases significantly at each successive trophic level, and that's basically where your answer should be surrounded by. Right? And we're just giving you a little example there, if time allows in the exam. Right? I just let you understand. Then it says now define bioaccumulation. And bioaccumulation is the gradual accumulation of substances such as pesticides, heavy metal, or other chemicals in tissues of living organism over a period of time. Right? So this is, for example, if they spray the callaloo with pesticides and then we as human we eat the callaloo, then over time we are accumulating the chemicals from the pesticide and the heavy metals, right, in your tissues and it lodges there. Says eating things with heavy metal, right? And it lodge over a period of time and those metals lodge in your tissues and they're very dangerous, right? They can cause a lot of health complication. Then we say next question, part three, part two, sorry, says the marine ecosystem in figure 6 is contaminated by heavy metal from the nearby industry. So this system now, right, this ecosystem is contaminated according to this question. Identify the organism in figure 6 which would have the greatest concentration of heavy metal and discuss the risk of its consumption to human health. Right? And this is the final question, guys. So, of course, the apex predator, the gray reef shark, would have the most, right? Because he would have eat everything here, right? And everything would have would be infected by the nearby industry with heavy metal. So therefore, it would accumulate in him, the gray reef shark. The question says, no, it says, discuss the risk of consumption to human health. Right. So we could write, before we reach, we could write the gray reef shark would have the greatest concentration of heavy metals in this marine ecosystem, and this is due to the process of bioaccumulation. Right? Then we can say it discusses risk. We have a lot of risk. We could say that it forms neural nerve problems, right? Gives nerve problems, damage the brain, it damage the kidneys, it has carcinogenic like matter, so of course it can give you cancer, right? Plus other effects. If you say any one of these effects, you would have gotten full marks. Yes, and we're at the end of the paper, guys. Thank you for finishing it with me. My opinion on the paper, it some of them a little think they have to think to actually get through this one. But it was fairly standard. So I hope you guys did well on it, and I'll see you on the next review. I'll see you in the next class. Bye bye, guys.